All right, so we've got some MATLAB here. Yay, MATLAB! Here's some notes that you can use to follow along, and I'm going to kind of play with these as well. But this is a MATLAB file. Anything that has a .m on it, that's going to be considered a MATLAB file. So let's create our own MATLAB file. You can either hit this new script, or you can come over here and create a new document, create a new script, but I'll just click here. You can create whatever you want. But if you save it, you can title it like my notes. You could say my notes, and see, now I have a my notes file. A script is basically the same thing as just typing directly into MATLAB. So I can say x equals 5 and hit enter, and I see it goes x equals 5. But then if I'm like, man, I wish I could do that again, that was really fun, I have to type x equals 5 again, and wow, that's a lot of work. So if I wanted, I can just type x equals 5 up here in my script, and I can run my script. And I can run it like as many times as I want, and it's like, wow, look how many times x equals 5, that's awesome. So anyway, that's the joy of a script. So there's my script. We can separate our script into sections by doing the double %sign. So this is like my new section, and I don't have to call it new section. I can call it Hillbilly Chicken Head or whatever. I'll just call it new section because that's kind of weird. So I can have my new section. And one of the nice things about especially taking notes in the sections and in a script is that you can always like rerun the code that we ran in class and see if you like it. So anyway, this is a script. Anything that's just a %sign by itself is a comment. So I'm like, this is a comment, x equals 5, and I can be like, I don't know, this is another comment, x equals 6, and then I can run it, and I see x equals 5 and x equals 6, but it skips right over the this is a comment thing. So it's a comment. It's how you can write stuff to yourself to help you remember what we did. So it starts with a %sign. You know, a new section starts with a double %. Now, don't type everything that I type, because I type as fast as I think. Well, that's not true. I think faster than I type, but I can type pretty fast, and so a lot of times I type stuff just for fun to keep myself entertained. Type things that are relevant to you. If all you're doing for these lectures is typing exactly what I type and not thinking about it, you're totally wasting your time, so don't do that. Okay, comments. Boop, doop, 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 doop. All right, so let's look at some different rules. First of all, variable names. So we talked a little bit about variables. Variable names have to start to a letter. Start with a letter. Variable names should be incredibly obvious to what it's referring to. So for example, I used to work for a company, and no joke, they had, I was looking at some code they wanted me to play with and fix, and there was something called like ZM52XR3 7 or something, and it was equal to 9.3 or whatever was going on. I was like, what is ZM52XR37? And they're like, oh, that's wind speed. Like, but why? And they're like, well, because it was taken on the something blah 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 blah. And I'm like, but why don't you just call it wind speed? And they're like, well, that was back whenever we could only use 8 characters for variable names. I'm like, but couldn't you just call it like wind speed or wind speed? And they're like, no, we named it XM52XR37 or ZM, whatever. Anyway, don't do that. That's really, really awful. If you write code like that, that means no one else can ever edit your code. And you're like, but then I have job security. But then it also means that like you have to write that code for the rest of your life, and you can never do anything funner than writing code with really obnoxious variable names. Another thing that you don't want to have is names like not tall, because then you might have something. So if you set not tall equal to 1, that means that I'm actually short. So rather than setting a variable called not tall equal to 1, you should call something short equal to 0. Wait, short equal to 1, yes. Or tall equal to 0. Those are all better than not tall is equal to 1. All right, so just some things to think about. So they do have to start with a letter. They are case sensitive, so I can have something like, you know, kisses equals 5 and kisses equals 6. And then I can say more kisses equals kisses plus kisses. And I get 11. So kisses is its own thing, and then kisses with a little k is 6. So 5 plus 6 is 11, okay? So remember that things are case sensitive, because sometimes what will happen is you'll be typing and then you'll be, 50 lines down in your code and you're like, why isn't my code working? And it's because you misspelled something or you didn't capitalize it. So the same thing applies to misspelling. So if for some reason I wanted kisses times 2, and I was like, oh, well, then that's kisses plus kisses, but I misspelled it the second time, it's going to yell at me, and it says, you misspelled it, and you're like, but that's not right, I defined kisses up there, and you're like, no, you didn't. So if I say 2 times kisses, but I misspell kisses, it's going to yell at me, because I misspelled it. Honestly, most of the problems you're going to have at the beginning are going to be related to, like, not spelling things right, or not being consistent with capitalization and stuff like that. There are a couple of reserved keywords, and you will know them whenever you see them, because when you type them, they turn blue. So if I wanted to say if equals 5, I'll say if equals 5, and I'm like, wait, why did that turn blue? If it turns blue, you can't use it. So there's a couple of others. For turns blue, while, so if, for, see how it's messing with me. Next, is that blue? No, next doesn't turn blue. End turns blue. Do? No. Loop? No. Trying to think of what other ones. Break? Continue? Those turn blue. Alright, so you can't have a variable called like break. You could have break time, and that would be fine. So if you really, really want to use something that's blue, change it. I think capital while is fine. You just can't use little while. That said, don't use capital while, because you're just going to confuse everyone who looks at your code. So if it turns blue, you can't use it. Let's see. You also can overwrite functions. So for example, there's a sign function. So I can say sign of 0, and sign of 0 is, hopefully y'all know. Oh, come here, girl. Oh, I misspelled kisses still. All right. So sign of 0 is 0. Okay, so sign of 0 is 0. And sign doesn't work in radians, but that's not the point right now. If I wanted to, I could define a matrix called sign equal to, I don't know, anything. And that really messes up the situation, because now if I try to say, well, what is blah of, let me start a new section so I don't mess this up. Whatever. I did mention this in one of the other videos if you missed it. I'm going to try to start a lot of my sections with CLC clear. What CLC does is it clears out this section here, the command window, and then clear actually clears out my variables. All right, so let's say instead of finding the sign of 0, I was finding the sign of 1. All right, so here we go. All right, so what you'll see is it's going to get kind of crazy. So when I first say, what is the sign of 1? It's 0.8415, which you're like, well, what does that mean? So that's literally if I take the sign of 1, which is pi over 180. Wait, why am I doing it this way? Sign of 1. Hold on, I got it. Yeah. Oh, because it's in radians. Let me not have to think so hard. I don't want to think hard right now. So I'm going to put my stuff into radians. So literally it's just the sign of 1. All right, in radians, and you can't really see that. There we go. So that's the sign of the value 1. And then, but I renamed sign. I've called it a new matrix called a 1, 2, 3, and now the sign of 1 is 1. So if I called sign, 45, 99, and 103, whenever I first run it, it says, oh, sign of 1 is 0.8415, yay! But then I redefined sign as equaling this really weird matrix, and it's like, oh, you must mean that you want the sign, meaning the SIN, the first element of the SIN matrix, in which case it's 45, and then your manager freaks out because he's like, how did you get the sign if something is 45? Because sign goes from -1 to 1. You're like, oh, because I was an idiot, and I overwrote the function name. MATLAB will let you do this. MATLAB will let you be an idiot, so don't do that. In general, don't name something, you know, don't name something square, don't make something like this that says square root equals 55 and 22, because then if I want to find the square root of 2, it says it's 22. So don't do that. Don't do that. I mean, MATLAB will let you, it will not give you an error sign, and I think part of that reason is there could be all kinds of weird functions that you don't know the name of, and then you accidentally try to use them, and reserving a keyword is like really hard, like computationally or whatever. So not computationally, but I know what I mean. It's complicated, so they let you overwrite stuff. In fact, I can create my own sign function. I can actually rewrite the square root function entirely. We're not going to do that today by any means, but basically, if you're going to write a variable, you can't use keywords. Come here. Here's your rules. You can't use keywords. You have to start with a letter. You are case sensitive. And you can rewrite over existing function names, but it is dangerous. So I think in this example, I actually show how you can rewrite pi. So if I say pi with a capital Pi, it's like, that's not defined. Did you mean pi? And you're like, thanks, MATLAB, I did. It's like, okay. But if I wanted, so I can say more, nothing around. So I'm going to do CLC clear again. So if I say pi, okay, so there's my pi. That's going to be 3.14159. I can just rewrite the value of pi as 3, like that one state tried to do in like the 1800s. You don't know what I'm talking about? Go Google it. It's kind of funny. And now all of a sudden I've rewritten the value of pi for everyone to see. So it was originally 3.14 like it was supposed to be, but now it's 3. No fun. Don't do that. That's just silly. And that's why a lot of times, like I said, I like to start things out with the CLC clear, because then if anyone else did something goofy, I get rid of it. Do 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 do. Come here, bro. Boop doop boop doop doop dee 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 dee. All right. Clear. Yeah. And just more stuff. All right. So there we go. So that's a good start. So, like I was saying, if I just come down here. So remember, anything that I type up here is just the same as typing it down there. It's just that if I want to use it multiple times, I don't have to retype it. So if I want to type CLC, that's going to clear this command window here. So CLC, the command window is gone. Say I want to type CLC again, I can hit C and hit the up arrow and see how that CLC is highlighted. That's kind of fun. So if I just hit the up arrow in general, I can go through with anything that I've typed and it works. So that's fun. And then see over here in my workspace, these are the variables. Remember, I rewrote pi as 3. If I go clear, that's going to clear out those variables. If for some reason I had like x equals 5 and y equals 2, if I only wanted to get rid of y, I could just say clear y and x would stay. But anyway, I just like to clear everything out. CLC, clear, gone. Good? Great.